cracking up. I couldn't stop laughing.
Well, thank you. That's the goal on a good day, is to hit the target well enough that you can get some laughs. So if that's happening, then I must be doing my job at least semi decently.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that, I mean, you have a full time job, right?
I do, yeah, yeah. I'm a college professor by day, and hopefully for not much longer. The Super 70s has grown, so much, and really the past 2 or 3 years, especially, that it's getting to a point where, I think I'm going to have to, move all in order to, ride this rocket and see where it ends up.
Okay. So the obvious question is, how did you stumble into this?
That is something that I've asked myself many times, because it's obviously it's a joy. I feel so lucky that this has happened. I really feel like I caught lightning in a bottle, and it goes back to, I was on Christmas break about, I don't know, maybe about 8 years ago, and I think I was just looking for something to amuse myself in my downtime. And I've always been, sort of a comedically minded person. I'm that guy, and I think that I was looking for an outlet for that. And I thought, maybe my friends would follow it, maybe a few other people, might notice it, but I never thought I would make a dime, uh, in terms of creating a career for myself. It was strictly something that I thought might be a little side hobby, nothing more.
So how much time a day do you think you spend, looking through and trying to find pictures and trying to come up with those captions?
Oh God. I mean, it's in intermittent spurts, from the minute that I wake up until the minute that I go to bed, really. It's become a part of my lifestyle. My phone is, almost an extension of myself at this point, in my life. And so, I would say easily I'm doing it, more than 10 hours a day, which is, pretty insane. But it's something that I work uh, doing, pretty much no matter where I am or what's going on. I'm the guy who would be, on his phone at a funeral, just because I've got to do it, even if I'm on vacation. And I was in Las Vegas last weekend, and I'm tweeting as I'm walking from one casino to the next, because I've always got to feed the beast. I tweet about maybe 25 times a day, so it's constant.
Yeah, and you'd think that you have a team of writers because of all the captions that you're coming up with. I mean, yeah, okay, we'll let the kids know there's some blue words in there that maybe aren't suitable for those under 13, but for those in the generation you're trying to go for, Gen X, 70s and 80s, I mean, it hits the mark.
Yeah, I mean, the language is one of those things that people do bring up to me, and I just tweet like I think, and I tweet like I speak. And really, I think the tone of the feed is that you're hanging out with me, because that's really the way that I've always viewed it. If it's my Twitter account, then and I had no thought that I was trying to build a brand or create an audience or whatever. I think the thing that's kind of most beautiful about Super 70s is it's all been completely organic. And I think my audience knows that, particularly the ones that have been with me for a few years, that I'm just a guy, uh, you know, like 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 my followers are, right? We're just guys, and I just hit a little sweet spot for myself and found this niche, and what I came to realize is that it's not just a few hundred people or my friends or my family that were interested. It turns out that there's so many of us, sort of this silent army of us that remember with great fondness and affection, the 70's and the 80's and 90's. And so it's almost like we have a little high school class reunion of sorts every day, even if we didn't all go to the same school.
I'm going to show people the brand because I think that the uniform that you have the baseball with the mustache, kind of modeled after the Astros jerseys from a long time ago. If people remember the creamsicles that I think people used to talk about all the time, but it's just one of those things that you look at and you're like, oh my god, it's the Astros, it's the 70s. This is stuff I can go back to and remember and really just reminisce.
Yeah, the logo is, I think evocative of the time period with the hair and the mustache and the uh, cigarette, obviously, and the shades and the garish colors and whatever. And the 70s was, sort of aesthetically letting it all hang out compared to most other decades, right? And so it's one of the things that I love about the 70s is that you kind of have this juxtaposition of just complete outrageousness in terms of the clothing, right? The leisure suits and plaids and all these crazy, bell bottoms and polyester to the right, and these huge cars that are, just land boats. Those mafia type cars that, all of us had a grandparent that drove one of those. It might have been a Plymouth,
A
it might
Buick.
have been an automobile, it could have been a Cadillac, but all those huge cars that all got 4 miles to the gallon, and the shag carpeting, and just sort of this just visually very interesting, let's say, time period. And then you still kind of push that back against, we were still a little more innocent and earnest as a society at the same time. And so the 70s, I think one of the reasons that people, I've been surprised and delighted to find that people remember the 70s with as much affection as I do. And I think one of the reasons for that is it really was just a kind of a sweet spot culturally where we had a lot of different things happening.
And it's kind of ironic too, because it was probably sweeter and more innocent because we didn't have social media. And now, because of social media, we can relive the 70s.
Yeah, and I think that in an odd way, part of the popularity for the account, at least based on what people tell me, is they like the account because it's sort of a sanctuary from so much of the sludge that you do find on social media. Sometimes I spend more time creating content on social media than consuming it, probably. But when I do start poking around Twitter and, kind of checking what people are talking about, sometimes I think to myself, oh, geez, okay, I guess I get why they like me, because if nothing else, even if I'm not having, my best day in terms of my jokes, if nothing else, it's a place where, and you can look around and you're not going to encounter anything that's probably going to give you a headache anyway.
Yeah, it's more comfort than anything, I think.
Yeah, it's chicken soup, for the Gen X kids' soul. And the younger generation seems to resonate with a lot of it too, because I think they haven't seen a lot of this stuff. For guys like you and me, we definitely have that nostalgic, it brings up personal memories for us, and things of that nature. And then you have like the younger generation who, for they may not get the reference on a number of the tweets, but so many of the tweets just, they speak for themselves just visually or as an idea, kind of regardless of what the caption or what the context is. And so I think that for younger folks, they get a kick out of seeing some of this wild stuff that that they've never heard of before.
Yeah, they probably can't believe the outfits either.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to believe that some of those outfits were worn with, as I said, so much earnestness. No, but we weren't so self-aware then. We're a little too self-aware in some respects, I think, as a culture now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to get to some of the tweets here in a second, but I want to get a little background on you. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the metropolis of Horse Cave, Kentucky.
Okay.
Population at the time, like 2,000, 2,500. I think we had one red light, maybe up to two now. But I'm from small town, rural Kentucky, and ended up in the Chicago area for my day job about 20 years ago.
So it kind of begged the question too, because in Kentucky there's no professional sports. What was the first sports team you really kind of gravitated to, and how did that happen?
That's a great question. And you're right. That was one of my great frustrations as a kid, was that Kentucky did not have a professional sports team, because my sports consciousness really begins in 1978. That's when, I look back on it and I think, the first Super Bowl I remember was Cowboys Broncos, which I think was Super Bowl 12.
Yeah.
I First World Series I remember was 78, with the Yankees defending against the Dodgers. And so the Kentucky Colonels, of course, got killed in the merger between the ABA and the NBA in '76. And so I was always fascinated with the fact that Kentucky had a professional basketball team, and it was sort of yanked away from me before I came of age. But the first team that I really became a hardcore, the first two teams that I became a hardcore fan of, the first was the Kentucky Wildcats basketball, because basketball is a religion in the state of Kentucky. And so I was indoctrinated into that, baptized into that from an early age. I've since recovered being a Kentucky fan, but that was the first, and they won the championship in '78. I was 6 years old when they beat Duke in '78, and so that was my introduction into college sports. And then my first pro team was the New York Yankees, and I was a hardcore Reggie Jackson fan. So, the first year that I was a fan of baseball, the Yankees won the World Series. So I thought it was easy. I was 7 years old, and all my favorite teams were going to the championship and they were winning. I didn't realize that it doesn't always work that way. Growing up to be a Cubs fan taught me, a lot harder than it seemed when I was a little boy.
Yeah, I had that affliction as well, and I haven't grown out of it. I mean, professionally, I've had to grow out of it a couple of times just because of the nature of what I was doing for a living. But yeah, that does teach you at an early age to take your punishment and kind of go with it, right?
Yeah, I think so. So sports, I think for those of us that are big sports fans, once we're hooked, we're hooked. And it's something that lasts a lifetime. I mean, even for folks that become, sort of you know, disgusted or frustrated with the state of the evolution maybe of sports. We can look at any league and say, well, in it, what's I guess for the NBA, the biggest complaint is like it's a 3-point fest now, right? And
Right.
I can say, the '80s, my God, Magic and Bird and the ball movement, and it was a more beautiful game to watch, in my opinion, right? But even for the guys who feel that way and say, oh, well, I don't like to watch the NBA or Major League Baseball, or whatever's the case now, those same people will always have an affection for the state of the sport, in its ideal form for them, right? Whatever that was. And so, there's lots of fans too that I think, regardless of what you think of the current state of sports, when you come to Super 70's, that you're going to be, seeing and viewing it throughout the tweets as, perhaps, what you viewed a better world as being.
The reason I was asking about the sports teams too is because I noticed on your tweets you have an abundance to use a lot of Montreal Expos stuff. I mean, Andre Dawson from the day, and Ellis Valentine, and Warren Cromartie, and Gary Carter, and all those guys. I mean, was there a connection between you and the Expos as well?
Yeah, it's funny. There's no real logical reason for why the kid from Kentucky would be a Montreal Expos fan. I think it goes back to the uniforms. I love the pinwheel hats, And I think for kids, lots of times, especially, I look at a lot of my favorite teams, and being from Kentucky and not having like a default favorite team necessarily to have, I suppose the Reds were the closest thing that we had. And I did go to a Reds game every year when I was a kid. That was the only major league ballpark that I'd ever been in until I was 20 years old, was Riverfront Stadium. But I never was a hardcore Reds fan. I liked the Reds, and so I think I became kind of a sports generalist for that reason, and it's turned out to serve me well, I think, in being the Super 70's guy, because I was following kind of the entire sports landscape rather than just the local teams. Now, I've talked myself all the way back around out of your question, so
Oh, that's okay.
with your question again, and I'll try to answer it.
And I was just kind of thinking, you answered it, because I was asking you really, what was what gravitated you toward the Expos, and I think you nailed it right there with the hats and everything too. So, oh, you're good.
Yeah, specifically for the Expos, I went to one Reds game a year and felt very lucky to do that. It was a little bit of a haul for us, maybe 3+ hour drive. And so my mom would take me to a game every year, and it was a big deal. You'd pick your game. Who am I going to go see them play this year? What team am I going to pick? Who do I want to see? And in 1983, I picked the Expos, and so I remember going to Riverfront Stadium. And I think I was captivated when they played "O Canada" before the game. That was like, I mean, I'm not much of a world traveler, so I mean, Montreal is probably about the most international flavor I had. But when I was a kid, absolutely, hearing "O Canada," I was fascinated. They're from a different country, and they had so many great players, as you were referencing. Andre Dawson, Tim Raines, Gary Carter. You got those Hall of Famers, Steve Rogers, Ellis Valentine, who is a friend and a great guy. Al Oliver, another guy that I know just a little bit, who's a very nice man. And so I became an Expos fan, and and bizarrely enough, I ended up on the cover of the Montreal Gazette back in, I think, around February of this year. They did a really nice, Stu Cowan did a really nice feature piece about me in the sports section, and they ended up, putting me down in the corner of the front page of the paper. So I think being on the cover of the Montreal Gazette might be about the coolest thing that has ever happened to me. So that was quite an honor.
It's funny you bring up the Expos too, because my brother and I, growing up, go back to the days where they played at Jerry Park, which was, before they went into the indoor stadium, and they had a public swimming pool outside the right field gate and outside the right field seats. And when we would go into the bathroom and fill up the bathtub, there was a little ledge, where the glass doors would stop, and we used to throw wiffle balls over the edge and pretend it was Cubs players hitting balls into the pool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's that was the thing. Park Jerry.
Yep.
The PARC. I mean, it's all very exotic for a Kentucky boy. So yeah, the Expos were one of my sources of fascination for sure as a sports fan, and I'm still hoping maybe one day there's going to be a path for Montreal to have an expansion Expos franchise, or take on a team that relocates. I know the Tampa base situation has been frustrating for the folks up there.
Yeah, it's funny you said that too, because there's several hockey players that I've come across in my career, getting a chance to interview them, that are from Montreal, and they beg for a team to come back there. They say, we got to get a team back there. Just get rid of that ballpark. That ballpark was awful. It was just, it had no friendliness. It had it was terrible. And they said that people love baseball there, but they hated the stadium. They didn't go.
It's, Olympic Stadium, I'm so happy. I finally got an opportunity to go there in 2014 when they were hosting a spring training game there. It was, I think the Mets played the Blue Jays a couple of times, and I know that they've done it since. But when I found out that they were going to be playing you know, actual major league teams in Olympic Stadium for the first time since the Expos left town, I knew I had to go. So I went up there for that. And that was my first, experience. I certainly had an idea of what Olympic Stadium was like from, watching it on television through the years and everything, but actually being able to go in it and walk around and experience it. I mean, it was a great experience and I loved it, but it was really like a time capsule. I mean, it's it is a cold structure that is definitely screaming 70s. I fucking loved it.
It was
But
cookie cutter. Yeah. Just like
yeah,
the old Riverfront and Veteran Stadium and all those stadiums.
give me those big concrete multi-sport surface. I mean, I'm a sick, twisted individual because I'm the guy who genuinely would probably rather see a game in one of those concrete bowls than in a beautiful ballpark. But yeah, they obviously need a stadium, and if they'd had a real ballpark, maybe perhaps history would have written itself differently as far as the relocation.
Yeah, they also had Le Grand Orange. They had Rusty Staub there for a while. Everybody loved him, and so many colorful players came from that. For a time, they were they were the minor leagues to the major leagues because everybody got traded from there to somewhere else and made that other team better.
Yeah, I mean, Montreal had a great run, and the fact that it was cut short in the way that it was still rankles me, and I can only imagine how frustrated the Expos fans from Montreal must still be.
All right, let's get back to Super 70s here because you mentioned being on the cover of the Montreal newspaper was something that was pretty cool for you. I'm going to show folks. I'm going to show you too that this tweet that I think kind of puts you on the map, and it's Howard Cosell surrounded by Bruce Jenner and O.J. Simpson, and your caption is hilarious because we all know what these other two men became, and it says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have looked into the future, and you will not believe this shit."
That's the one. Every day when I get up, that's the target because what it went around the world and back around the world again, and it's you see it memed. Even now, I see it around the internet as I'm going around and looking for material and stuff. And so that's the one that I think kind of um, probably moved me up a tier in the growth process for Super 70s. And obviously that was a visual that the number one thing I needed to do was just not screw it up with the caption, right? I think the caption was a good caption, so I will give myself credit for that.
Yeah,
But
pat yourself on the back. That was a good one.
I'll give myself a little self back pat there for that. But it speaks for itself, and there's a reason that it resonated so much.
There are times when I look at your Twitter feed and I swear that you were living in my house because I'm putting up the one right now with the Sears catalog, and it had this page in it that always had all the football jerseys. I think even at one point you could buy a full set. You had the shoulder pads, you had the helmet and everything because my brother and I used to circle those things in the catalog every time the holidays would come around to make our parents understand that this is the jersey we wanted, this is what we wanted. And your caption says best page in the Series catalog every year. I got Earl Campbell and Doug Williams when I was in fourth grade, and I'm still psyched about it. I swear you were you were living with us because you knew what we were doing.
See, I mean, that's the thing. I spent most of my life thinking that some of these opinions that I had, I didn't realize that we all felt this way, And so I think that as much as anything was why this thing took off is I just started saying stuff that I think we all kind of privately thought, but we just weren't talking about really, I just kind of came into the room and just started pointing out this shit. And, a lot of folks related to it. Obviously, as I've learned in the years of doing Super 70s, I mean, it was pretty much all of us that were looking through those catalogs and lusting after these things. And, it was a kind of universal childhood that we had in a way that I'm not sure kids today are getting. Culture is so much more splintered now, and there's a lot of advantage to it. I mean, obviously, I can't sit here and say that social media is bad when social media is the only reason that I'm even here having a conversation. Social media has been good to me, so I wouldn't want to live in a world without it. But having said that, back in our day, there were fewer things, and therefore we all did more similar things to one another. And I think, these decades later, I believe we probably have more things that are kind of universally or semi-universally relatable than maybe kids will, 30 or 40 years from now. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we talk about simpler times. I'm putting up the tweet right now with the lovely paper football, which to me was the defining moments of some of our recesses in grade school. And it says there's nothing like kicking off a game of paper football. Be honest, you're totally into it right now, aren't you? And I'm like, I had to explain to my fiance because when we get paper plastic bags from restaurants, she will fold them exactly like the old paper football. And I'm like, oh my God, paper football. And she looked at me like I got I grew a second head. And she's not that much younger than I won't say how old she is, but she's of the generation and she never saw that. And I used to make those things in class.
Yeah, well, girls were doing those things where you would like move it in and it would change.
Oh yeah, the origami stuff.
Yeah, the origami stuff. I see. I don't understand. I still don't understand what they were doing. But this, I understand. And the caption for that tweet was just a genuine thought. I'm conditioned to, if I see one of these things, like I want to play. There's a part of me right now, that wants to reach through my phone and grab that and put it down on the table and see if, skid one over for a touchdown.
Yeah, and we couldn't wait until it was Thanksgiving because my mom would put the extra leaf in the dining room table and made the field that much longer. So we had to go from a 2-down football to 4 downs. It was great.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty big deal right there.
That was huge.
Like
so,
super.
Exactly, and kicking the field goals with the finger goalposts and getting undoubtedly getting nicked in the face at one point by that thing was a rite of passage.
Oh yeah, I mean there's got to be some guy out there in an eye patch right now. Yeah, that's his intriguing story of how that happened to him. But that was the best part of scoring a touchdown, was getting to kick the extra point.
That's right.
That was really the funnest part of the game.
And there were so many ways to do it. You could hold it on the little tiny tip. You could hold it like oblong. There were so many different ways to try to kick, and you had to figure out which way was going to be the best for you.
I guarantee you there are competitive leagues of paper football out there somewhere. I'm going to look. I'm going to Google later, but I guarantee you there have to be some nut jobs our age who take it way too seriously and are having tournaments and stuff.
Well, please let me know if you find that out, because I'd like to get in on that myself.
If not, maybe you and I just found our calling. We can be co-partners on this incredible new sport.
Hey, if the USFL can come back, paper football can come back, right?
Yeah, I think we've got a better chance than the USFL.
I think you're right too. The other thing that you tweet about, and it just amazes me. I'm going to put another one of these up here, and you find these pictures, and again, the caption really makes it work, because there's a picture of a guy in an Edmonton Oilers jersey. He was a goaltender who looks like he's like 70 years old. And you wrote in there that if your goalie doesn't look like a 56-year-old two-term senator who has co-sponsored some key legislation, I don't feel confident about your chances in the playoffs. I can't say that any better.
My only problem with that tweet was settling on how old I was going to say he was. I decided 56, but 56 somehow sounds funnier than 60, but if you told me that he was 60 there, I wouldn't blink. I mean, I'm 50, So he looks like he could, he definitely looks like he might be my dad. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not out of the question.
He looks like a young Walter Mondale.
Yeah, he does. He looks, he looks very senatorial. Ted Cruz retweeted that, by the way.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So,
So yeah, you're getting some traction on these things.
yeah, a little senator. I guess, I know. I know. Anytime you mention a politician, I'm not presenting it with an opinion about Ted Cruz, but
No, no.
yes, senatorial humor, is probably in short supply.
Yes.
He probably enjoyed that for that for that reason.
And the other things you tweet about too are things, and you admittedly go from 70s and into the 80s as well, because there's some movie references here. And one of my favorite movies of all time that I could probably do with you right here, right now, word for word, is Fletch. And there's some great scenes. Obviously, the one where he pretends he's the aviation expert and the technician, and reminds everybody that it's all ball bearings.
It's all about ball bearings nowadays. Manure spreader on the Santa Ana, right? I believe.
Yes.
Terrible mess.
And the tremendous buildup of muck on the windshield.
That's right. So yeah, it's a Fetzer valve issue. I believe was the diagnosis, but yeah, I mean, Fletch is one of the most quotable movies of the '80s or any other time, really. And obviously, the moral of this whole deal is go to the Super 70 Sports Store.com, where you can find all kinds of Fletch inspired and other weird thing inspired apparel.
Yeah, and before I want to ask you about that, but I want to ask you about a couple other things real quick too, because you concentrate sometimes on not just toys, but also candy. And I think yesterday I replied to one of your tweets yesterday about bottle caps. I mean, I was a kid growing up. I was allergic to chocolate, so I couldn't eat Hershey bars or Reese's peanut butter cups or anything like that, like all my friends were. And I gravitated to those sweet candies like sweet tarts and bottle caps. And I looked at that picture, and your tweet was, you can smell the picture. I could taste the picture too. I mean, it was just one of those things where, and it got me thinking. I think I responded to it and said that there was a lime one before there was a cherry one.
You even know your bottle caps history.
How about that?
You're so into it.
That's scary.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you have your credentials.
And Neapolitan ice cream. You've also tweeted about Neapolitan ice cream, which was the greatest ice cream of all time. Even when a kid was growing up allergic to chocolate, if I just had a tiny little sliver of it when I was scooping the strawberry or the vanilla, it was okay, but I got that taste.
You got a little bit of flavor there. You were innocent. You weren't going for it, but once you got up on that Neapolitan line, there was bound to be a little crossover.
Oh, it's just so good. And, Mattel electronic football and the electronic football itself and the big wheel. And I mean, it's one of those things that you don't have to be a sports fan to really appreciate and enjoy. It helps a little bit in some cases, but I think it just speaks. I mean, I don't know if that was your original intention, but it just speaks to people of a certain age and a certain generation that kind of long for the good old days when we could just go downstairs in the basement and play with the garage with the lift for the Matchbox cars or the Hot Wheels.
Yeah, people ask me why Super 70 Sports, and the answer of why Super 70 Sports is I didn't have any idea that it was going to become what it became. I thought I was going to create a Twitter feed where I tweeted things about sports in the 70s. And that's what it was going to be, to the 5 seconds of thought that I had given it before I decided to create the account. And as time goes on, as you're tweeting 20, 25 times a day, sometimes more than that, you need content. There's only so much content. The internet is a vast place, but there's only so many things to talk about. And what I found was, I had things to say about stuff that wasn't just sports. I wanted to talk about the cars. I wanted to talk about the clothes. I wanted to talk about the toys. I wanted to talk about the candies. And I thought, well, why limit myself? I don't want the tail to wag the dog. I shouldn't be tweeting to the name because that doesn't make any sense. And so I started to float tweets about some of this other stuff in just to see what people would think. And, I found that stuff, if anything, was more popular uh, than the sports stuff. And so I realized then, well, if this is what people want, I've got a lot to say about it. And so it just seemed like a natural thing to do. And then once I started doing that, it really kind of opened Super 70s up, into being something that was able to cover a lot more ground. Obviously, we do the 80s, as you said. We even go into the 90s a little bit, just things that, are going to be remembered by folks that are our age, and younger people too, as we start to get into the 80s and the 90s a little bit. And so I always tell people, sports is always going to be an important theme of Super 70s sports, and the 70s are always going to be an important theme of Super 70s sports. But the the world of Super 70s is a little bit more broad than that, and I think that's the way that people like it.
Do you feel pressure now? I mean, because I mean, everything you've done is great. I mean, I haven't really seen, and maybe you think otherwise, that there have been some duds. I haven't really noticed any, to be honest with you. But do you feel some pressure? Producing. I mean, you're talking 20 to 25 tweets a day. There's got to be something, that you're thinking of. Oh man, is this going to go? Is this going to work?
Yeah, I wake up every day without a plan. I wake up every day without usually anything in the can. Most days I wake up and I just get going. I mean, obviously, there's going to be certain themes and things that you've done before that you rerun from time to time, or I kind of workshop it, make it better. How can I take this and caption it better than I did a year ago or whatever. So there's some of that where you're trying to challenge yourself and see what you can do. But that's really there's always new content that has to be created, and that goes back to, what I said. I've created a beast. Now I have to feed it. And I love it. I love the beast. The beast has given me opportunities. I've friendships and business relationships and a platform, like, I could have never imagined. So, I'm super grateful for it, and I love it. I truly love it. Super 70s is, I really, I say it's like an extension of myself. I mean, it is that personal for me. And so for it to have become so popular, and for people to have been, by and large, so kind to me, once you become a public figure of any degree, you're gonna have some detractors, and you have to learn to deal with that. But by and large, folks have been so awesome to me. And so, it's great, but that pressure aspect absolutely is there. I feel like as the audience gets bigger, there's more pressure, because, I not to take myself too seriously, but I feel like I have set a standard of a certain caliber of comedy and a certain caliber of the way I present nostalgia and whatever else it is I'm tweeting. And so, I'm aware when I get up that I can't just string together garbage, because that's not what people view Super 70s as, at least, the folks that choose to follow me. And there's definitely pressure. And, I have a lot of confidence, because I've been doing it now for, going 7+ years. So, I have that belief in myself, because it's the thing that I do better than I do anything else. Everybody has their thing, right? Whatever that is. And some people are talented and have multiple things that they're really good at. But, this just happens to be my thing. So it's kind of my sanctuary. If I'm having a rough day or anything's going on, I can always kind of go into Twitter, get into my zone. And, it's my pitcher's mound, right? When I go out there and get in Twitter, that's where I'm comfortable. And, Some days are better than others. I will say that you're kind to say that you haven't seen me miss very much, but I miss every day. Usually every day there's at least two or three pullbacks because I think in some ways the part of this that maybe people don't think about is, what I'm really doing is tantamount to stand-up comedy a lot of the time. The feedback is immediate. It's being delivered in the thought needs to be funny and it needs to be delivered in a concise way. And then when you hit send, the reaction comes swiftly. I know within 2 or 3 minutes how well a tweet is going to do, because that's a large enough sample size for me to know if this one is dying, it's going to do okay, or it's going to take off. I know immediately. So what I'm doing is a lot like stand up, but unlike stand up, I'm not working in a club with like 20 drunks, sitting around trying to see how my material works. Like, I'm sending live ammo out to over 500,000 people, because there's no place for me to go and workshop it to a smaller audience, so you can't think about that too much or it'll mess with your head. But yeah, if I see something that I put out there just dies and I was lukewarm on it myself, I'll just pull that one down, because I figure why leave your why leave your miss hits out clogging things up, right? So I prune the timeline like a tree, Andy, is what I'm telling you.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do. And all stars miss what, 7 out of every 10 times.
That's right. That's absolutely right. That'll get you to the Hall of Fame. Is what they say, right? So,
Yeah.
I got to hit a little more than it's like free throws. If I'm hitting 80+% of the time, I guess I'm satisfied with that.
That's good. All right, before we let you go, let's get to the store, because it's an incredible view. I mean, I've been there a few times myself, and not only do you have things nostalgia, but you also have kind of your own takeoffs on certain things. The Wide World of Sports logo, and I noticed you turned that into something of your own at super70sportstore.com. What was that process like? First of all, I mean, I know there's a lot of licensing that's involved and a lot of red tape you got to get through, don't you?
Yeah, it's the store itself, really is comes out of the desire to take things that are compatible with the feed and what the feed hits on, and then to try to essentially create tweets that you can wear in a way, right? I mean, obviously I don't mean literally the verbiage of a tweet on a shirt, but shirts that capture the spirit of Super 70s, and hopefully in a lot of cases putting designs and things in the store that maybe people aren't finding everywhere else. Things that when you're looking through the store, I always am excited when I feel like somebody has found a shirt in the store that was a really 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 deep cut reference. Sometimes they're like Easter eggs, right? You'll put a shirt in the store, just because I think it's cool. And I'll be like, there's only going to be like 15 people that get this reference, but like 13 of them are going to buy the shirt, that kind of thing, so it's a lot of fun. And, it's obviously, something that has been popular with my followers, and, I'm certainly grateful for that.
And a lot of times you'll have coupon codes too to make it a little more affordable for people, which is a great thing, especially these days. And there's so much to like on there, and it's kind of an incentive, I think, to go somewhere where you're going to be taken care of a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much an evergreen for us, offering a discount with the code, and it's a thank you to the followers as well, because none of this would be possible without my audience, and really, the gratitude that I have for my audience is huge, because there is no Super 70s, and nobody would know who I was if not for the folks that come and contribute every day too. I always say that the tweets themselves are just the starting point. Hopefully, the tweet either makes you laugh if it's intended to be funny. They're not all intended to be funny. Some of them may be just interesting facts, or, a shout out to some athlete or celebrity for whatever reason. But for the ones that are intended to make you laugh, which is probably most of them, what you're certainly hoping for is that you make people happy, and provide some bit of entertainment for them. I don't feel like I'm obviously not curing cancer or anything like that, but I would like to feel that, to the extent Super 70s has any kind of even tiny impact on the world, that it's positive, because it's making people laugh, and have something that they can feel good about.
It's a place, I feel like it's a safe place because I don't usually respond to tweets if I think that someone's going to get on there and rip me and make me get defensive, and make a lot of people defend. This is the kind of stuff, like I said before, this is stuff that's near and dear to a lot of people who are replying to these tweets. It's near and dear to their heart, and it may spur a memory on for somebody else. Or like for me, the other day, I wanted to make sure I was remembering correctly that there was a lime bottle cap. It sounds stupid, but I wanted a little affirmation, and I got it.
Yeah, well, the this is why I say the comment section is, I mean, it may be the best part about it, because every tweet is kind of like a jump ball, right? Or maybe it's like a beach ball, getting batted around Dodger Stadium or whatever. But the tweet goes out. Hopefully, people click like. Hopefully, it gets retweeted. That's what I'm going for. But man, the stuff that people come up with in the comments, and the side conversations that get going, like what you're referencing, that is like so much of the pleasure of this, because my audience, and I really do believe this. I'm not going to Eddie Haskell, fake compliment, goodness, Mrs. Cleaver, you look lovely. I'm not going to try to do that with my audience to patronize them. But I think I got the best clientele on Twitter, because I mean, witty, intelligent, funny people. And yeah, there's a few knuckleheads that pop in, but they usually get shouted down pretty quickly by the folks that know what's up. So yeah, for me, it's fun to be able to go into the comments and just see some of the brilliant stuff that's in there, and feel like I'm indirectly responsible for it, because I started the conversation. Sometimes it's humbling, honestly, to see some of the brilliance of things that other people contribute. And sometimes I even see comments and I think to myself, oh dang it, like that was the caption that I you know
Why didn't I think of that?
exactly. I'm not jealous of other people's material too often, but it does happen, and it happens in the comments section.
Well, Ricky, I could talk to you for hours here about this stuff, because it's, again, something that is, pop culture from that era, the sports from that era. It's right up my alley. And, we could go on for hours here, but, you've got to eat dinner. I got to eat dinner, and those kind of things. But I really want to thank you for taking some time here and kind of shedding some light on how things got started, and kind of putting a face to the name of the of Super 70 Sports. And again, visit the store, super70sports.com. And there's a lot of great stuff in there for you and for your the sports fan in your life.
Absolutely. Father's Day is coming up. It's a great for you. My girlfriend got a couple of sweet shirts for her dad. He's wearing his Thornton Mellon Tall and Fat men's clothing store a shirt around or whatever. So it's humbling, to see him do that. But no, in all seriousness, Andy, it's been a real pleasure coming on with you today and talking about all these things, and I appreciate you having me on.
You bet. Continued success to you, and I'm sure I'll be retweeting and responding here in the near future.
Hey, please do. I'll be disappointed in you if you don't.